What's up, world? I'm Cameron McKinney, and this is Pop Culture Spotlight, a podcast about the movie The Assessment. Here's a quick synopsis. In the future, a couple, Maya and Aryan, want to have a child, but doing so means they have to go up for assessment, which means being monitored for 7 days by Virginia, an assessor who is looking into whether or not they will make good parents. The film stars Elizabeth Olsen, Alicia Vikander, and Himesh Patel. Standout performances. I already believed Elizabeth Olsen was a top talent, but her last two performances now have me thinking she's one of the best actresses working today, and they are in His Three Daughters, which I talked about on this very podcast, where she played Christina, who was preparing for the loss of her father with her two sisters, played by Carrie Coon and Natasha Lyonne. And that gets us to the movie of the hour, The Assessment, where she plays Mia, a character who wants to be a mom, but is worried she wouldn't be a good one because of her own mother. The biggest strength of Olsen's as a performer is her ability to play intense emotions effortlessly. She never goes over the top. She's subtle, and it's beyond effective. I feel like this is something I've talked about on this podcast the last few weeks. Is the actor I'm talking about a movie star, or are they just a really good actor? And in the case of Elizabeth Olsen, watching her on screen, she really does feel like both things. Like she at the same time sells you on the movie that you are watching and also does great acting. There is a little bit of that movie star thing where she is bringing herself to every role, but it does feel like she's doing something different in every movie that she is in. Not to get into all of the Marvel stuff, but I do find it interesting that at one point they had Wanda, the character she plays in the Marvel films, lose her accent, and I think the reason is because Elizabeth Olsen is way more interesting of a person than doing an accent and completely losing herself. She's not Meryl Streep. You don't want to see her do a voice. You want her to bring herself to the role because she has movie star potential. Elizabeth Olsen will next star in the movies Eternity with Miles Teller, Caleb Turner, and Divine Joy Randolph, and Panic Carefully with Julia Roberts, Eddie Redmayne, Brian Tyree Henry, and Joe Alwyn. One of Olsen's co-stars in The Assessment is Alicia Vikander, who has been one of my favorites since seeing her in Alex Garland's Ex Machina and Guy Ritchie's The Man from U.N.C.L.E. My favorite of her performances came in David Lowery's The Green Knight, where she had an unreal monologue. In The Assessment, Vikander plays Virginia, who at times is pretending to be a child. She's a mysterious character throughout the movie who you're not sure of. This is a performance where Vikander is definitely given a whole lot to do. I personally don't think Alicia Vikander has been given enough credit for how she tests herself in movies. I mean, in The Green Knight, she played dual roles, and now she's doing this in The Assessment, and I don't hear a lot of people talking about her when it comes to her talents as an actress. Vikander will next star in the movies Hope with Michael Fassbender and Taylor Russell, The Last Day with Wagner Moura, and The Wizard of Kremlin with Paul Dano, Jude Law, Zach Galifianakis, and Jeffrey Wright. And finally, Himesh Patel was given what looked to be a breakout role in Danny Boyle's Yesterday, which I like a whole lot, but most people are mixed on. Since he's been in Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer, Adam McKay's Don't Look Up, and the miniseries Station 11. In The Assessment, he plays Aryan, who thinks very highly of himself and believes he's a visionary. It's at this point the best film performance of his career. Of the three main leads of the movie, he's definitely given the least to do. Another way of putting it is he's the one character in the movie who doesn't really evolve throughout. He is the same character the entire film, while the other two characters go through drastically different changes by the end of the movie. They are emotionally both in different headspaces, and his character is not. Patel will next be in Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey and Enola Holmes free, and I really do like the place where he is at as an actor, where he can be the leads of interesting movies like The Assessment and then play a supporting part in a movie made by a great filmmaker like Christopher Nolan. I also don't believe we've seen the best of him as an actor yet. I think he's getting better by the movie. The Assessment is a film with a high concept, and I am fond of movies with high concepts mainly because I want to see how the whole thing is going to come together, because these movies are risky. More so than other movies, it's all about how the movie is going to end. I say that because you want to see if a movie like this has more to offer than the concept itself. You know the famous success stories, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind and Groundhog Day. Recent examples of high concept fare includes 9 Days starring Winston Duke and Zazie Betts, and Fingernails starring Jessie Buckley, Jeremy Allen White, and Riz Ahmed. I find that most high concept movies are about the romantic relationship. I just watched Richard Curtis's About Time, a romantic comedy with an element of a high concept starring Donald Gleason and Rachel McAdams. And if you've seen that movie, you already know that film is pure delight. So as I said, the ending of a high concept movie is the most important element, and I will not spoil this movie's ending, but will say it works and is interesting. One of the things that this movie has going for it is that it takes a few surprising turns. There were a few scenes where I believed I knew where the movie was going, and then it went in a completely opposite direction. There are not a lot of movies nowadays that can completely surprise you. The Assessment for me was one of those movies. So how exactly can you tell if a high concept movie is good? I think the judgment should be, is the movie itself more interesting than the concept? Because if you walk away from a movie like this and are still just talking about the concept, then the movie didn't really work on you. If the movie makes you go beyond the concept, then it's a success story. For nearly 2 decades now, people have been talking about Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, not because of the plot, but because of the characters and the theme of the movie, the romance behind the film, and of course the relatability of the movie. And The Assessment has that as well. I have to imagine that if you were going to become a parent for the first time and you watch this movie, you're going to really relate to what Mia is going through. She's worried about becoming a mom because of the failure of her own mother. The relatability and the emotional factor help make these characters become bigger than the high concept itself. It's like Groundhog Day. What Bill Murray is doing in that movie is undeniable. He becomes bigger than the concept of living the same day over and over again. In the end, these movies come down to the actors, because these movies won't become bigger than the concepts if the performances don't land. And luckily, all 3 of the performances in The Assessment do land, for me anyway. I want to talk more about Elizabeth Olsen and Alicia Vikander because I see a lot of similarities between the two. For one thing, both are actors who people have preconceived notions about. For Elizabeth Olsen, all the talk surrounding her career is about the fact that she's Scarlet Witch in the Marvel movies, and the majority of the fans of those have not seen her standout work in the indie Martha Marcy May Marlene with Sarah Paulson and the Western Wind River with fellow Marvel star Jeremy Renner. I also have to add that I love her in the movies Liberal Arts with Josh Radnor, Kill Your Darlings with Daniel Radcliffe and Dane DeHaan, and Kodachrome with Jason Sudeikis and Ed Harris. There are people out there who did not think she was a good actress until she made the television series WandaVision. I remember when Quentin Tarantino garnered a lot of attention by saying that the Marvel movies are not turning actors into movie stars, and I don't think that he was dissing the actors. They've done good work outside outside of those movies. What he was saying is that audiences don't follow those actors to other genres. Olsen has suffered from this, so has Tom Holland, Sebastian Stan, Anthony Mackie, Jeremy Renner, Chris Hemsworth. Just because you are a fan of Elizabeth Olsen as the Scarlet Witch clearly doesn't mean you are going to watch her in any movie she's in. And that's what Tarantino was saying. And that's kind of a problem, that those movies didn't turn these actors into A-list stars, which I believe Elizabeth Olsen deserves to be. I believe most of the Marvel actors have picked interesting movies outside of the Marvel Cinematic Universe to star in, and for reasons I don't understand, audiences have not followed them to those movies. Then you have Alicia Vikander, who won an early Oscar for The Danish Girl and then got her own opportunity to be the lead of her own franchise with Tomb Raider, which didn't pan out. And I don't feel like people have paid attention to her career since. It's similar to what happened with Jessica Chastain. She had a wave of early success. The difference is we still treat Jessica Chastain like she's a movie star and treat Vikander like she's an afterthought. So here's what I think is ultimately going to end up happening to both of these two. They are going to continue to go on this great run that they're both on. They're going to continue to make interesting movies with good concepts, with good filmmakers, have really good co-stars, and then all of a sudden we are finally going to pay attention to what they are doing. They're going to get an Oscar nomination. For Olsen, it would be her first. For Vikander, it would be her second. I'm of the belief that if you do enough good work, people finally start to pay attention. That's what happened with the McConaissance. He just did so much good work in a row that it became undeniable, and that's how Matthew McConaughey ultimately won an Oscar. Yes, I believe way more people should be paying attention to the works of Elizabeth Olsen and Alicia Vikander. I believe they are at the top of their game. I would put both of them on my list of the top 10 actresses working right now. The choices they're making, the performances they are giving are all noteworthy, but I have faith that in time people will start to take notice. And it's most likely only going to happen one of two ways. One way is that they do bigger movies, and I don't see that happening anytime soon. Elizabeth Olsen has already done the Godzillas, the Marvel movies. I think she's bent on making movies like The Assessment. And after the failure of Tomb Raider, I don't see Vikander trying to lead another blockbuster anytime soon. What I want to happen and what should happen is top tier directors should want to work with these two actresses. I'm talking the big names. I'm talking the Quentin Tarantinos. I'm talking the Paul Thomas Andersons. I'm talking the Steven Spielbergs. They should be in line to work with these two actresses. Like for one of the Knives Out sequels, can I please get Alicia Vikander in one of them? Please, because then she would get to be in a movie that everyone sees and get to give a good performance in it. The same goes for Elizabeth Olsen. Like, I want to see her work with someone like David Fincher. The two ways to get people to have eyeballs on your movies in 2025 is to either be in a big studio movie that you know everyone is going to see, or be in a movie made by an A-list filmmaker. You know the names: Christopher Nolan, Ryan Coogler, Yorgos Lanthimos. It's worth noting that Elizabeth Olsen was going to be in The Lobster but had to drop out because of a Marvel movie. That's one of the reasons I find Himesh Patel to be really interesting with this trio of actors, is he's the guy who's doing both things. Like, he's going to be in Enola Holmes 3 with Millie Bobby Brown and Henry Cavill as Watson. I don't know if Enola Holmes 3 is going to be a good movie. I like the first two Enola Holmes films, but I do know a lot of people are going to watch the movie Enola Holmes 3. A lot of people are going to see Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey, and it doesn't matter if he only has about 5 minutes in that movie. Because I'm such fans of them, I want to see more people watch Alicia Vikander and Elizabeth Olsen movies. So one thing I've learned learned doing this podcast, or most people are not like me, in that I'm an easy sell for a movie. I watched this movie, The Assessment, and wanted to do this podcast on it because it stars Alicia Vikander, Elizabeth Olsen, and Himesh Patel. 3 recognizable names. Yes, I knew about the concept, I had read about it, but only because it had those 3 names. That's how I look at movies. I go, do I care about these actors, and do I want to see these actors work together? I found it to be more than enticing to see Vikander share the screen with Elizabeth Olsen. That was the biggest selling point for this movie for me as an audience member. And I know and I understand that most people don't feel the same way. The only other way for these two to gain more attention is to get more awards recognition. And I've already talked about the fact that I believe Alicia Vikander should have been nominated for an Oscar for her performance in The Green Knight. And I could make the argument that Elizabeth Olsen was more than deserving for her performance in His Three Daughters. These two are at a place for me that when they are in a movie, I want to see that movie. I see the name Alicia Vikander, I go, I have to see this movie. I see the name Elizabeth Olsen, I go, wow, I gotta see what that's about. I see movies more for the actors than the movie itself, and I guess most people don't look at movies that way. I also just believe that when you get 2 actors of this caliber together in one movie, you're going to get a special moment, and that's exactly what you get in The Assessment. Their final scene together in The Assessment is one of the best scenes of 2025. I think what's interesting about the state of movies that we are in is that we as a society used to care more about the actors. I mean, we saw Ocean's 11 because of Brad Pitt and George Clooney coming together. People were hyped up for Heat because of Al Pacino and Robert De Niro. I mean, just the possibility of seeing them in the same scene got people to go see a movie. Now it doesn't seem like any pairing of any actors gets people juiced up for movies anymore, and I don't know what that's about, because that's really what it is about for me. Not that Elizabeth Olsen and Alicia Vikander are on the names of the people I just mentioned, but the selling point for me to see this film was to see them together in the same movie, because over the last decade or so, I've had a history of them giving terrific performances, and I desperately wanted to see them go toe-to-toe, and boy, did they deliver. The Assessment is a movie that has a lot of things going for it: an interesting high concept, 3 terrific performances given by Alicia Vikander, Elizabeth Olsen, and Himesh Patel, and a thrilling ending that will have you thinking long after the movie's done. I do find it very strange to talk about a movie like this on this podcast, because I ultimately don't know how many people have heard of this movie, how many people are going to watch this movie. I just feel like it's a movie worthy of discussion, and it's the type of movie I wished more people paid attention to. I'll end the podcast on this note. I am interested in the state of the high concept movie. Like, can a movie with a super high concept be uber popular anymore? Because Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind was a hit, and it also got awards recognition. Groundhog's Day, as you know, was a massive hit. These movies were hitting the zeitgeist at the right time. Can you sell a movie on a super high concept and it be massively popular anymore? Frankly, I don't know the answer to that question. I do enjoy a movie with a high concept. They are movies that force you to pay attention more, because again, you want to see where the movie is heading. You want to see if the movie is doing something interesting with the concept, or if it's just going to end up being an interesting failure. They are also just movies you're going to end up watching all the way through. through, because you're not going to watch a movie like The Assessment and turn it off halfway through. You're going to want to see how the puzzle comes together. What are we building towards with the high concept? And in the case of The Assessment, it's a great scene between Elizabeth Olsen and Alicia Vikander. And one thing I really haven't talked about enough on this podcast is the look of this movie. I mean, sometimes the look of these futuristic science fiction films are bland and boring, or other times you feel like the movie is trying too hard to look like a science fiction film. The best compliment I can give The Assessment is that it feels and looks like a movie I had not seen before. Thanks for listening to this edition of Pop Culture Spotlight. I'm Cameron McKinney, and there'll be a new episode of the podcast every Thursday on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. I highly recommend you check out the film The Assessment. Next week on the podcast, I'm talking about Guy Ritchie's Fountain of Youth, starring Natalie Portman and John Krasinski. So tune into that, and please rate, review, and subscribe.